The fabric of Beatrice Carson's lavender dress strained against her curves as she walked down the dusty main street of Jordan Valley, Oregon. Her head held high despite the whispers that followed her like tumbleweeds in the wind. It was June of 1882, and the afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the small frontier town, nestled in the high desert country where Idaho, Nevada, and Oregon met. Beatrice had learned long ago to ignore the stares and the cruel comments about her full figure, but some days the weight of judgment felt heavier than others. She had come to Jordan Valley 3 months ago with her widowed mother to start fresh after her father's death back in Missouri. Her mother had taken work as a seamstress, and Beatrice helped her while also working part-time at the general store. The Carson women were hardworking and respectable, but that did not stop certain members of the community from making Beatrice feel like an outsider because she did not fit the fashionable ideal of a slender waist and delicate frame. Today was market day, and the street was busier than usual. Ranchers from the surrounding territories had come to town to sell cattle and buy supplies. Beatrice walked toward the general store, carrying a basket of mending her mother had completed for Mrs. Henderson, the banker's wife. As she passed a group of women gathered outside the millinery shop, she heard the sharp voice of Margaret Sullivan cut through the air. "Look at her, strutting about like she owns the place. That dress looks ready to burst at the seams. Someone should tell her that fabric is expensive and she is wasting yards of it." The other women tittered behind their fans. Beatrice felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept walking. She had heard worse from Margaret Sullivan, whose tongue was as sharp as her features were pinched. The woman seemed to take particular pleasure in making others feel small, perhaps to make up for her own miserable marriage to a man who spent more time with whiskey bottles than with his wife. "I wonder if any man will ever look twice at her," another voice chimed in. This one belonged to Alina Pritchard, a blonde woman barely 20 who had half the young men in town vying for her attention. Poor thing. She would be better off accepting spinsterhood now rather than harboring false hopes. Beatrice's fingers tightened on the basket handle, but she maintained her composure. She had been raised to be a lady, and ladies did not engage in public arguments, no matter how much they might want to. She continued toward the general store, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. She had almost reached the store when a new voice joined the cruel chorus behind her. This one belonged to Marcus Webb, a young ranch hand known for his wandering eye and loose morals. "Hey, Beatrice, why do you not save everyone the trouble and order your dresses from the tent maker? At least then they might actually fit." This comment drew loud laughter from several men loitering outside the saloon. Beatrice stopped walking. Her heart pounded in her chest and tears stung her eyes. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. She would not. "That is enough." The voice that cut through the laughter was deep and steady, with an edge of steel that demanded attention. Beatrice turned slightly to see a tall man step away from the hitching post where he had been checking his horse's saddle. He was lean and broad-shouldered, with sun-darkened skin and light brown hair that fell just past his collar. He wore dusty riding clothes and a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face, but she could see strong features and eyes that were currently fixed on Marcus Webb, with an intensity that made the younger man take a step back. "I said that is enough," the stranger repeated, walking toward the group with a measured pace that suggested he was not a man to be trifled with. "Where I come from, men do not speak to ladies that way, and they certainly do not mock them for sport." Marcus puffed up his chest, trying to recover his bravado in front of his friends. "This is not your business, stranger. We are just having a bit of fun." "Fun?" The tall man stopped a few feet away from Marcus, his hands resting loosely at his sides. Is that what you call it? Seems to me you are being a coward, hiding behind laughter while you tear down someone who has done nothing to you. Who do you think you are, coming into our town and telling us what to do? Marcus shot back, but there was uncertainty in his voice now. My name is Levi Yates, and I work for the Anchor Ranch about 15 miles north of here. I have been riding through Jordan Valley for the better part of a year now, and I know enough to recognize decent folk from those who are not. He turned his gaze toward the group of women who had started the mockery. That goes for all of you. You should be ashamed of yourselves. Margaret Sullivan gasped in indignation. How dare you? We are respectable women. Respectability is not measured by who you marry or how you dress, Levi said calmly. It is measured by how you treat others, especially when you think no one important is watching. He turned then, and for the first time his eyes met Beatrice's. They were hazel, she noticed, green and brown mixed together like the scrubland that surrounded the town. His expression softened as he looked at her, and he took off his hat in a gesture of respect. Miss, I apologize that you had to endure such rudeness. You have done nothing to deserve it. He walked closer, his boots stirring up small clouds of dust with each step. When he was only a few feet away, he stopped and spoke words that Beatrice would remember for the rest of her life. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. The street went silent. Even the horses seemed to stop their restless shuffling. Beatrice stared at him, certain she had misheard. No man had ever called her beautiful. Pretty, maybe, in a conditional way. She has a pretty face, was the most common refrain, but beautiful with no qualifications or exceptions. Never, She started, but her voice failed her. Levi smiled, and it transformed his entire face from stern to warm. I mean it, miss. Every word. Those folks behind us are fools if they cannot see what is right in front of them. Beatrice felt tears again, but this time they were different. They were tears of something she could not quite name. Relief, perhaps, or gratitude, or the strange, sudden hope that maybe the world held more kindness than she had come to expect. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. That is very kind of you to say. It is not kindness if it is the truth. He held her gaze for a moment longer, then glanced down at the basket she was carrying. May I walk you to wherever you are headed? I would consider it an honor. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Together, they walked the remaining distance to the general store while the townspeople watched in stunned silence. Beatrice was acutely aware of Levi beside her, tall and solid and real. When they reached the store's entrance, he opened the door for her and touched the brim of his hat. I hope I will see you again, Miss Carson, she managed. Beatrice Carson. Miss Carson. He said her name like it meant something, like it was worth remembering. I am usually in town on Saturdays to pick up supplies for the ranch. Perhaps our paths will cross again. Perhaps they will, she said. And then she slipped inside the store before she could say something foolish or start crying in earnest through the window. She watched him walk back to his horse, mount up with easy grace, and ride out of town. Several people were still standing in the street, staring after him with various expressions of shock and disapproval. Margaret Sullivan looked like she had swallowed something sour, and Marcus Webb had already disappeared into the saloon, probably to nurse his wounded pride with whiskey. Did I just see what I think I saw? The voice belonged to Thomas Garrett, the store owner, a middle-aged man with kind eyes and a generous spirit. He had come to stand beside Beatrice at the window. I am not entirely sure what you saw, Mr. Garrett, Beatrice said, still feeling dazed. I am not certain what just happened myself. That young man just told off half the town on your behalf and called you beautiful in front of everyone. That is what happened. Mr. Garrett chuckled and shook his head. Good for him. Those people needed someone to stand up to them. They have been getting away with their nasty behavior for far too long. Beatrice turned to look at him, surprised. You heard them. What they said about me. I heard, and I did not like it one bit. But I am an old man who depends on those people's business to keep this store running. I am ashamed to say I did not have the courage to speak up myself. He patted her shoulder gently. That Levi Yates seems like a good man. I have seen him in here a few times. Always polite, always pays his debts, works hard from what I hear. I do not even know him, Beatrice said softly, but even as she spoke the words, she felt a strange pull in her chest, as if some part of her wanted very much to know him. Maybe that will change, Mr. Garrett said with a knowing smile. Now, what brings you by today? More of your mother's excellent mending. Beatrice conducted her business in a daze, barely aware of what she was doing. Her mind kept returning to Levi Yates and the way he had looked at her, not with pity or condescension, but with genuine admiration. Could he have truly meant what he said? Or was it simply a kind gesture from a good man who could not stand to see someone being mistreated? When she finally left the store, the street had mostly cleared. The market day crowds were beginning to thin as the afternoon wore on. Beatrice walked home slowly, replaying every moment of the encounter in her mind. By the time she reached the small house she shared with her mother on the edge of town, she had convinced herself that she would probably never see Levi Yates again, that it had been a moment of chivalry and nothing more. But she was wrong. The following Saturday, Beatrice was helping her mother hang freshly washed linens in the backyard when she heard a knock at the front door. Her mother, Catherine Carson, wiped her hands on her apron and went to answer it. Beatrice continued pinning sheets to the clothesline, enjoying the way they billowed in the warm breeze. Beatrice, you have a visitor. Her mother's voice carried a note of surprise and something else that Beatrice could not quite identify. Curiosity, perhaps. She left the laundry basket and walked around to the front of the house, tucking a loose strand of dark hair behind her ear. Levi Yates stood on the porch, hat in hand, looking slightly uncertain but determined. He had cleaned up since she last saw him, his face freshly shaved and his clothes free of trail dust. When he saw her, his expression brightened. Miss Carson, I hope I am not intruding. I was in town for supplies and thought I might stop by to see how you were doing. Beatrice was aware that her mother was watching this exchange with great interest, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed and a small smile playing at her lips. Mr. Yates, Beatrice said, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. This is unexpected. I can leave if this is a bad time, he said quickly. I do not want to impose. Nonsense, Catherine spoke up before Beatrice could respond. You are not imposing at all. In fact, I was just about to make some lemonade. Would you care to join us, Mr. Yates? We have a shaded porch out back where it is much cooler than standing here in the sun. That would be wonderful, madam. Thank you. And just like that, Levi Yates was sitting on their back porch, drinking lemonade and making polite conversation with Catherine Carson while Beatrice tried to remember how to breathe normally. Her mother asked him about his work at the Anchor Ranch, and he explained that he had been working there for almost 2 years, ever since he had come west from Ohio. I grew up on a farm, but I wanted to see more of the country, he said. I worked my way west, taking jobs where I could find them. When I got to Oregon, I signed on with the Anchor Ranch, and I have been there ever since. It is good work, honest work, and the owner treats his men fairly. And you came all this way by yourself? Catherine asked. Yes, madam. My parents passed when I was 17, and my sister married a good man in Ohio. I knew she would be taken care of, so I felt free to make my own way. There was a flicker of old sadness in his eyes when he mentioned his parents, but it was clear he had made peace with his losses. That takes courage, Catherine said approvingly. Starting over in a new place is never easy. No, madam, it is not. But I have found that good things can happen when you are willing to take chances. As he said this, his gaze shifted to Beatrice, and the meaning behind his words was clear. Beatrice felt her heart skip. She took a sip of her lemonade to cover her confusion of emotions. She wanted to believe that his interest was genuine, but years of mockery and rejection had taught her to be cautious. How could someone like him, strong and capable and undeniably handsome, truly be interested in someone like her? As if sensing her doubts, Levi set down his glass and leaned forward slightly. "Miss Carson, I want to be honest about why I came here today. When I rode away from town last Saturday, I could not stop thinking about you, about what those people said and how you held your head high despite their cruelty. But more than that, I could not stop thinking about how I wanted to know you better, to hear your voice and learn what makes you smile." Catherine made a small sound of approval and stood up. "I think I should check on the laundry. You two talk." "Mother," Beatrice protested, but Catherine was already gone, disappearing into the house with a knowing smile. Alone with Levi on the porch, Beatrice felt suddenly shy. "You do not have to say these things, Mr. Yates. I am grateful for what you did last week, truly, but you do not owe me anything." "I know I do not owe you anything," he said gently. "That is not why I am here. I am here because I want to be. Because when I saw you walking down that street with your head held high despite everything, I saw strength. And when I looked into your eyes, I saw kindness and intelligence. Those are rare qualities, Miss Carson, worth far more than fitting into some narrow idea of what people think you should look like. You barely know me," she whispered, voicing the fear that had been circling in her mind all week. "Then let me get to know you. Let me call on you properly, if you are willing. I know I am just a ranch hand without much to my name except a good horse and honest work, but I promise I will always treat you with the respect and admiration you deserve." Beatrice looked at him, really looked at him, and saw nothing but sincerity in his eyes. This man who had stood up for her when no one else would, who had called her beautiful in front of the whole town, who had ridden out to her house just to see her again. Maybe, just maybe, she could allow herself to hope. "I would like that," she said softly. "I would like that very much." The smile that spread across Levi's face was like sunrise breaking over the mountains. "Thank you. You have made me very happy, Miss Carson. Perhaps you could call me Beatrice, since we are going to be spending time together." "Beatrice," he said, testing her name on his tongue. "It is a beautiful name, and you should call me Levi." They talked for another hour, and Beatrice was surprised by how easy it was to speak with him. He asked about her life before Jordan Valley, and she told him about growing up in Missouri, about her father who had been a carpenter, and her childhood spent reading books and helping her mother with sewing. He listened attentively, asking questions that showed he was genuinely interested in her answers. In turn, he told her about his journey west, about sleeping under stars and working odd jobs, about the day he had arrived at the Anchor Ranch, and known he had found a place he could call home, at least for a while. He spoke about his dreams of someday having his own land, a modest spread where he could raise horses and cattle. "I have been saving every penny I can spare," he admitted. "It will take time, but I am patient. Good things are worth waiting for." When he finally stood to leave, the sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. He thanked Catherine for the lemonade, and then he turned to Beatrice. "May I come see you again next Saturday? I would like that very much." "Then I will count the days until then," he said, and he meant it. She could see it in his eyes. After he left, Catherine came to stand beside Beatrice on the porch, watching as Levi rode away. "That is a good man," Catherine said. "I can tell. "He is not like anyone I have ever met before," Beatrice admitted. "Mother, you think it is possible that he truly means what he says? That he really finds me beautiful?" Catherine turned to face her daughter, placing both hands on Beatrice's shoulders. "My darling girl, I wish I could make you see yourself the way I see you, the way your father saw you. You have always been beautiful, inside and out. The fact that some small-minded people cannot see past their own narrow prejudices does not change that truth. If Levi Yates sees what I see, then yes, I believe he means every word." Tears welled in Beatrice's eyes. "I want to believe that." "Then believe it. Let yourself be happy. You deserve happiness, Beatrice. Do not let the cruel words of others rob you of that." Beatrice hugged her mother tightly, feeling a surge of gratitude for this woman who had always stood by her, who had never once suggested that Beatrice should try to change herself to please others. Catherine Carson had taught her daughter that a woman's worth was not determined by her appearance, but by her character, her kindness, her strength. The weeks that followed were the happiest Beatrice had ever known. Levi came to visit every Saturday without fail, and gradually those visits extended to other days as well. He would ride into town after finishing his work at the ranch, arriving dusty and tired but always with a smile for her. Sometimes they would sit on the porch and talk. Other times they would walk through town together, and Beatrice learned to ignore the stares and whispers because Levi's presence beside her made her feel valued and protected. He brought her small gifts, nothing extravagant, but things that showed he was thinking of her. A pretty stone he had found by the creek, a wildflower he had picked on his ride into town. Once he brought her a book he had ordered from Portland, a volume of poetry he thought she might enjoy. "How did you know I love poetry?" she asked, touched by his thoughtfulness. "You mentioned it once in passing," he said. "I pay attention, Beatrice." And he did. He remembered everything she told him, every small detail about her life and her dreams. He asked her opinions on things and listened carefully to her answers. He treated her like her thoughts mattered, like she mattered. In late August, Levi invited Beatrice to visit the Anchor Ranch. "I want you to see where I spend my days," he said. "And I want you to meet some of the people who have become like family to me." Catherine agreed to chaperone the visit, and on a warm Sunday afternoon, Levi arrived with a wagon to take them out to the ranch. The ride took about an hour, following a dusty road through sagebrush-covered hills. Beatrice sat beside Levi on the wagon seat while her mother sat in the back, and they talked and laughed as the landscape rolled by. The Anchor Ranch sprawled across a wide valley where grass grew thick near a winding creek. Cattle dotted the hillsides, and Beatrice could see several buildings clustered together, including a main house, a bunkhouse, a barn, and various other structures. As they pulled up to the main house, a man emerged to greet them. He was in his 50s with graying hair and a weather-beaten face that creased into a warm smile when he saw them. "This must be the famous Miss Carson I have been hearing so much about." Levi climbed down from the wagon and helped Beatrice and Catherine down. "Beatrice, Mrs. Carson, this is Robert Mackenzie, owner of the Anchor Ranch and the best boss a man could ask for." "Levi exaggerates," Robert said, but he looked pleased. "Welcome to the Anchor Ranch, ladies. My wife Nancy has been looking forward to meeting you. She is in the house preparing more food than the three of us could eat in a week." Nancy Mackenzie proved to be a warm, motherly woman who immediately took to both Beatrice and Catherine. She insisted they all stay for dinner, and soon they were seated around a large table laden with roasted chicken, vegetables from Nancy's garden, fresh bread, and apple pie. During the meal, Robert told stories about life on the ranch and Levi's part in it. "This young man is one of the hardest workers I have ever had," Robert said. He has a natural way with horses that is rare to find. I have been trying to convince him to stay on permanently, maybe even become my foreman eventually." Levi looked embarrassed by the praise but also pleased. "Mr. Mackenzie is teaching me a lot about managing a ranch. I am grateful for the opportunity." After dinner, Levi gave Beatrice a tour of the ranch while their mothers stayed behind to chat. He showed her the horses he had been training, and Beatrice watched in admiration as he worked with a young mare who was skittish and nervous. His touch was gentle but firm, his voice low and soothing, and gradually the horse calmed under his care. "You are good at this," Beatrice said. "I love it," he admitted. "There is something honest about working with animals. They do not judge you or lie to you. If you treat them well, they give you their trust. It is simple and true." They walked along the creek, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the water. Levi picked up a flat stone and skipped it across the surface, sending it bouncing 3 times before it sank. "I used to do that with my father by the river back home," he said. "Some of my best memories are of simple moments like that. Just being together, not needing to talk, just enjoying the quiet." "I understand," Beatrice said. "I feel that way when I am with you, like I do not have to perform or pretend to be anything other than who I am." Levi stopped walking and turned to face her. They were standing in the shade of a cottonwood tree, the sound of flowing water creating a peaceful background to the moment. "Beatrice, these past few months have been the best of my life. Every time I see you, I find something new to admire. Your kindness, your intelligence, your laugh, the way you see beauty in small things. The way you have remained gentle despite the way some people have treated you." Her heart was racing. "Levi, I know it has not been long, and maybe some would say it is too soon to feel this way, but I cannot help it. I am falling in love with you, Beatrice. Actually, I think I started falling in love with you that first day I saw you on the street, holding your head high with such dignity. I just did not realize it yet. The world seemed to stop spinning." Beatrice stared at him, at this man who had changed her life simply by seeing her, truly seeing her and choosing to stay. "I love you too," she whispered, and as soon as the words left her lips, she knew they were true. She had been falling in love with him gradually, day by day, moment by moment, until it had become as natural as breathing. Levi reached out and gently cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her cheeks with infinite tenderness. "May I kiss you?" she nodded, unable to speak. He leaned down slowly, giving her time to change her mind, but she did not want to change her mind. She wanted this, wanted him, wanted this moment that felt like everything she had ever hoped for but never believed she would have. His lips met hers softly, reverently, as if she were something precious. The kiss was gentle and sweet and perfect, and when they finally pulled apart, Beatrice felt tears on her cheeks. "Why are you crying?" Levi asked, concerned. "Because I am happy," she said, laughing through her tears. "I am so incredibly happy." He pulled her into his arms, holding her close while the creek burbled beside them and the cottonwood leaves rustled overhead. Beatrice rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart, and felt a peace she had never known before. When they returned to the main house, Catherine took one look at her daughter's glowing face and knew something significant had happened. She caught Beatrice's eye and smiled, a small, knowing smile that said she was happy for her daughter. The ride back to Jordan Valley that evening was quiet but comfortable. Levi held the reins with one hand and kept the other close to Beatrice, their fingers occasionally brushing together. When they reached the Carson house, he helped them both down from the wagon. "Thank you for coming today," he said. "It meant a lot to me to share that part of my life with you." "Thank you for inviting us," Catherine said warmly. "Your Mr. and Mrs. Mackenzie are lovely people. You have found a good situation there." After Catherine went inside, Levi lingered with Beatrice on the porch. "I should get back before it is full dark, but I do not want to leave." "I do not want you to leave either," Beatrice admitted. "But you have a long ride ahead of you and I will see you soon." "Friday," he said. "I already asked Mr. Mackenzie if I could have Friday afternoon off so I could come see you." "Then I will count the hours," she said, echoing his words from their first meeting. He kissed her again, just a brief touch of lips, but it left her breathless all the same. Then he climbed back into the wagon and drove away, turning once to wave before he disappeared into the gathering dusk. The next few months passed in a blur of happiness. Levi came to see Beatrice as often as his work allowed, and their love deepened with each passing day. He began talking about the future, about his dreams of buying land and building a home, and increasingly those dreams included her. In October, when the air had turned crisp and the leaves on the few trees in Jordan Valley had turned gold, Levi asked Catherine's permission to marry Beatrice. Catherine gave her blessing without hesitation. "I can see that you love my daughter truly," she told him. "And more importantly, I can see that you make her happy. That is all I have ever wanted for her." Levi waited until the next day to propose properly. He took Beatrice on a ride into the hills east of town, to a spot where they could see for miles in every direction. The high desert stretched out before them, vast and beautiful in its own stark way. The sky was impossibly blue, and the air smelled of sage and earth. "This land may not be much to look at for some people," Levi said, standing beside his horse with Beatrice's hand in his. "It is not lush or green like back east, but there is something honest about it. It does not pretend to be anything other than what it is. And if you look close enough, you can see that it has its own kind of beauty." "I have grown to love it," Beatrice said. "When I first came here, I thought it was harsh and unforgiving. But now I see what you see, the strength in it, the beauty that is not obvious at first glance." Levi turned to face her fully, still holding her hand. "Beatrice Carson, from the moment I first saw you, my life changed. You have taught me what it means to truly love someone, to admire them not despite who they are, but because of who they are. You are brave and kind and intelligent and, yes, beautiful. So beautiful that sometimes I cannot believe I am lucky enough to be standing here with you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. From it, he took a simple gold ring with a small but bright diamond. "This was my mother's ring. My father gave it to her when they married, and before she died, she gave it to me and made me promise to give it to a woman I loved with my whole heart. Beatrice, you are that woman. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Beatrice's face as she looked at the ring, at Levi, at the vast landscape around them that suddenly seemed full of promise. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." He slipped the ring onto her finger, and it fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. Then he pulled her into his arms and kissed her deeply, and Beatrice felt as though her heart might burst from happiness. They were married in December, a small ceremony in the church in Jordan Valley with only close friends and family present. Catherine cried happy tears throughout the entire service. Robert and Nancy Mackenzie came from the ranch, and Nancy fussed over Beatrice like she was her own daughter. Even Mr. Garrett from the general store attended, bringing a beautiful quilt as a wedding gift. Not everyone in town approved, of course. Margaret Sullivan made her displeasure known to anyone who would listen, claiming that Levi Yates had made a terrible mistake. But Beatrice found that she did not care anymore. She had spent too many years worrying about what people like Margaret thought. Now she had Levi, who loved her completely, and that was worth more than the approval of the entire town. Beatrice wore a cream-colored dress that her mother had made, simple but elegant, with lace at the collar and cuffs. She had woven small flowers into her hair, and when Levi saw her walking down the aisle, his eyes filled with tears. "You are so beautiful," he whispered when she reached him at the altar, and she knew he meant it with every fiber of his being. They spoke their vows in steady voices, promising to love and honor each other for as long as they both lived. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Levi kissed her with such tenderness that several people in the congregation sighed. Robert Mackenzie had offered them the use of a small cabin on the edge of the Anchor Ranch property, a place where ranch hands had lived in the past, but which currently stood empty. It was not much, just 3 rooms and a porch, but Levi had spent weeks fixing it up, repairing the roof and walls, building new furniture, making it into a home. When he carried Beatrice across the threshold that night, she gasped in delight. The cabin was cozy and warm, with a fire crackling in the hearth. Levi had even picked wildflowers despite the winter cold and placed them in a jar on the table. "It is not fancy," he said, suddenly sounding uncertain, "but it is ours." "It is perfect," Beatrice said, and she meant it. This small cabin, with its rough wooden floors and simple furnishings, was more precious to her than any mansion could have been, because it represented a life she had built with the man she loved. Their first months of marriage were an adjustment, as all marriages are, but they were happy months. Beatrice learned to cook on the wood stove, sometimes burning things and sometimes creating meals that made Levi close his eyes in pleasure. Levi taught her to ride properly so she could explore the ranch with him. They would ride out together on Sundays, his only full day off, and discover new corners of the vast property. Catherine came to visit often, and she had news of her own in the spring. Thomas Garrett, the widower who owned the general store, had begun courting her. At first, Catherine had been hesitant, feeling it was too soon after her husband's death. But Beatrice encouraged her. "Father would want you to be happy," Beatrice told her mother. "And Mr. Garrett is a good man. I have seen the way he looks at you." By summer, Catherine and Thomas were engaged, and in August they had a quiet wedding with Beatrice and Levi standing as witnesses. Beatrice was thrilled to see her mother happy again, and she liked Thomas very much. He treated Catherine with respect and affection, and he made her laugh, which was the best gift of all. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Levi continued to work hard at the ranch, impressing Robert Mackenzie with his dedication and skill. True to his word, Robert promoted Levi to foreman in the fall of their first year of marriage, which came with a raise in pay and more responsibility. Levi took the job seriously, and the other ranch hands respected him because he never asked them to do anything he would not do himself. Beatrice found her own purpose as well. She began helping Nancy Mackenzie with various tasks around the ranch, including keeping books and managing supplies. Nancy's eyesight was beginning to fail, and she was grateful for Beatrice's assistance. Beatrice discovered she had a talent for organization and numbers, and she enjoyed the work. In the spring of 1884, Beatrice realized she was with child. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had waited to be sure before telling Levi. When she finally shared the news with him one evening after dinner, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. His face went through a series of expressions: shock, joy, wonder, before settling on pure happiness. "A baby! We are going to have a baby." "Yes," she said, laughing at his astonishment. "In about 6 months, if I have counted correctly." He picked her up and spun her around, then immediately set her down, looking worried. "I am sorry, should I not have done that? Is it safe? I do not know anything about these things." "I am pregnant, not fragile," Beatrice said, still laughing. "But perhaps you should save the spinning for after the baby is born." Levi placed his hands gently on her still flat stomach, his expression full of wonder. "Our child is in there, a little person we made together. Beatrice, I cannot believe it. I cannot believe how lucky I am. We are both lucky, she said softly, placing her hands over his. The pregnancy was not easy. Beatrice suffered from terrible nausea in the early months, and as she grew larger, everything became more difficult. But Levi was endlessly patient and helpful, taking on extra chores without complaint and bringing her anything she needed. Nancy Mackenzie also became a source of comfort and advice, having raised 3 children of her own. In November of 1884, on a cold night when frost covered the ground, Beatrice went into labor. Nancy came to help, and Catherine rode out from town despite the late hour. Levi paced outside the cabin like a caged animal, and Robert Mackenzie had to practically force him to sit down and drink some coffee. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. There were moments when Beatrice thought she could not go on, but Catherine held her hand and Nancy spoke encouragement, and she found strength she did not know she possessed. Finally, as the sun was beginning to set on the second day, a baby's cry filled the cabin. Beatrice fell back against the pillows, exhausted beyond measure, and Nancy placed a small bundle in her arms. "You have a son," Nancy said, smiling. "A beautiful, healthy son." Beatrice looked down at the tiny face, red and wrinkled and perfect, and felt a love so overwhelming it took her breath away. The baby had a shock of light brown hair in his father's nose. As she watched, he opened his eyes and looked at her, and she fell in love all over again. Levi was allowed in then, and he approached the bed with an expression of awe. "Is that your son?" Beatrice said softly. "Would you like to hold him?" With shaking hands, Levi took the baby from her, cradling the tiny body against his chest. Tears ran freely down his face as he looked at his son. "He is perfect. Beatrice, you are amazing. Look what you did." "We did," she corrected gently. "They named him James after Levi's father." James Yates was a healthy baby with a strong set of lungs, and he quickly became the center of their world. Levi was a devoted father, taking overnight feedings whenever he could so Beatrice could rest, changing diapers without complaint, and spending any free moment just holding his son and marveling at the miracle of him. Robert and Nancy became doting honorary grandparents, and Catherine visited as often as she could, bringing small gifts and offering advice. Even Thomas Garrett seemed charmed by little James, carving him a set of wooden blocks as a gift. Life was full and busy and sometimes overwhelming, but it was good. Better than good. It was everything Beatrice had ever wanted but never dared to dream she might have. When James was 6 months old, Levi came home one evening with news. "Robert is selling me some land," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. 40 acres adjacent to the ranch near that spot where I proposed to you. He is giving me a good price and letting me pay it off over time. Beatrice, we can build our own place. A real home, not just a cabin." "Levi, that is wonderful." Beatrice felt tears of joy spring to her eyes. She knew how much this dream meant to him. "It will take time," he cautioned. "We will have to build slowly as we can afford it, but Robert said I can continue working for him while I get my own operation started. He is even going to sell me some cattle and horses to get me going." "I am so proud of you," Beatrice said, holding James on her hip while she kissed her husband. "I know you will make it work," and he did. Over the next 2 years, Levi worked tirelessly, splitting his time between his job as foreman and developing his own land. With help from other ranch hands and Robert's guidance, he built a sturdy house, much larger than the cabin they had been living in. It had 4 bedrooms, a spacious kitchen, a sitting room, and a porch that wrapped around 2 sides of the house. They moved in when James was 2 years old, and Beatrice cried when she saw what Levi had created for their family. He had built window boxes for flowers, knowing she loved having plants around. He had made sure the kitchen had plenty of light and workspace. He had even carved their initials into the beam over the front door, along with the date. "This is for us," he said, holding her and James on the porch of their new home. "For our family, for all the years we will spend here together." "It is perfect," Beatrice said. "You have made it perfect." As Levi built up his herd and his reputation, word spread that he was an honest man who treated his animals well and delivered what he promised. He began to make a modest profit, enough to reinvest in the business and slowly pay back Robert for the land and livestock. In 1887, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant again. This time, the pregnancy was easier, and in early 1888 she gave birth to a daughter they named Lily. Lily had dark hair like her mother and hazel eyes like her father, and she was a happy baby who rarely cried. James was fascinated by his little sister, and he would sit beside her cradle for hours, talking to her in his childish voice and trying to make her laugh. Watching her husband with their children, Beatrice felt her heart swell with gratitude for the life they had built together. The years passed in a blur of busy days and quiet evenings. The ranch prospered slowly but steadily. Levi hired a couple of ranch hands to help with the work, and Beatrice managed the household and helped with the books. James grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved animals as much as his father did. Lily was bright and energetic, always asking questions and getting into mischief. In 1890, their third child was born, another boy they named Samuel. He was a chubby, cheerful baby who smiled at everyone and everything. Catherine and Thomas visited often, doting on their grandchildren. Nancy and Robert Mackenzie remained close friends, and Robert continued to mentor Levi in ranching. But life was not without its challenges. In the summer of 1891, a drought hit the region hard. The creek that ran through their property slowed to a trickle, and the grass turned brown and brittle. Cattle prices dropped because everyone was trying to sell stock they could not afford to feed. Levi made the difficult decision to sell off part of his herd at a loss rather than watch the animals suffer. It was a devastating blow financially. Beatrice watched her husband struggle with the decision, knowing how much each animal represented to him in terms of time, money, and effort. But she also saw his compassion, his refusal to let profit come before the welfare of his animals. "We will rebuild," she told him one night as they lay in bed, both too worried to sleep. "We have done it before and we will do it again. What if we lose everything?" Levi asked, voicing the fear that had been haunting him. "What if I cannot provide for you and the children?" "Then we will start over," Beatrice said firmly. "Together. Levi, I did not marry you because you had a ranch or money. I married you because I love you. That has not changed, and it will not change no matter what happens." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I do not deserve you." "Yes, you do," she said. "We deserve each other." They made it through that difficult summer and fall by being careful with every penny and by accepting help when it was offered. Robert Mackenzie quietly extended credit for supplies, and other ranchers in the area shared resources. The community, when it came together, could be a powerful force for good. When the rains finally came in late fall, it felt like a reprieve. The grass began to grow again, and gradually life returned to normal. Levi slowly rebuilt his herd, being more cautious this time, keeping a reserve fund for emergencies. By 1893, the ranch was thriving again. Levi had established a reputation as one of the most honest and skilled ranchers in the region. People came to him to buy horses because they knew his animals were well trained and healthy. His cattle were known for being strong stock, That year brought both joy and sorrow. In the spring, Catherine fell ill with pneumonia. Beatrice spent weeks at her mother's side, nursing her with Thomas's help. For a while it seemed Catherine might not recover. But she was strong, and gradually she began to improve. By summer she was back to her old self, though the illness had aged her. "I am not ready to leave yet," Catherine told Beatrice during her recovery. "I still have grandchildren to spoil and years to spend with Thomas. Death will just have to wait." Beatrice laughed through her tears and hugged her mother gently. "I am glad to hear it. I am not ready to lose you." That same year brought happier news as well. In the fall, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant with their fourth child. At 32, she felt old to be having another baby, but she was also thrilled. This pregnancy was the easiest of all, and in the spring of 1894 she gave birth to another daughter, whom they named Rose. "We have quite the garden now," Levi joked as he held baby Rose while Lily, 6 years old, and Samuel, 4, crowded around to see their new sister. Lily and Rose, growing alongside our boys. James, who was 9, tried to act mature and uninterested, but Beatrice caught him sneaking into the nursery multiple times to check on the baby. "I am just making sure she is breathing," he said defensively when Beatrice found him there one night. "That is what big brothers do," Beatrice said, kissing the top of his head. "They watch over their siblings." Life settled into a new rhythm with 4 children. The house was always busy and often chaotic, but it was filled with laughter and love. Levi proved to be a wonderful father, patient and kind but firm when he needed to be. He taught the boys to ride and work with the animals, and he made sure the girls learned as well. "A woman should know how to take care of herself," he said, when Beatrice expressed surprise that he was teaching Lily to handle a horse. "You never know what life will throw at you." As the children grew, Beatrice watched them develop their own personalities. James was serious and responsible, taking after his father in temperament and his love for animals. Lily was bold and adventurous, always ready to try something new. Samuel was the peacemaker, gentle and diplomatic, able to smooth over conflicts between his siblings. And Rose, as she grew from baby to toddler, showed signs of being sharp and observant, missing nothing that went on around her. In 1896, Jordan Valley got its first proper school, and Beatrice enrolled James and Lily. She had been teaching them at home, but she wanted them to have the experience of learning with other children. Some of the old prejudices still existed in town, and Beatrice worried that her children might face mockery because of her. Her fears were realized when Lily came home crying one day, saying that some older girls had made fun of her mother's size. Beatrice felt the old familiar pain flare up, but it was quickly replaced by anger. Not at the girls, who were only repeating what they had heard from adults, but at the injustice of it all. Levi was furious when he heard what had happened. He wanted to march into town and confront the girls' parents, but Beatrice stopped him. "No," she said quietly. "That is not the way to handle this. We need to teach our children how to respond to cruelty with dignity, not with more anger." She sat down with Lily and James and had a long talk with them about why some people said mean things, how it usually came from their own unhappiness or ignorance, and how important it was not to let those people's words define you. "Your father taught me that," she told them. "When I was feeling at my lowest, when I believed all the cruel things people said about me, your father showed me that I was worth more than their opinions. He saw me for who I truly was, and I want you to see yourselves that way too. You are smart and kind and brave. Those other girls do not get to decide your worth. Only you get to do that." Lily listened carefully, her tears drying. "Did people really say mean things about you, Mama?" "They did," Beatrice admitted. and sometimes their words hurt very much. But then I met your father, and he helped me see that their words said more about them than they did about me. Papa always says you are beautiful, James said matter-of-factly, and he is the smartest man I know, so he must be right. Beatrice felt tears prick her eyes. Your father is a very wise man. After that conversation, Lily seemed to handle the situation better. She made friends with children who were kind, and she learned to ignore those who were not. James, protective of his sister, made it clear to anyone who would listen that his family was not to be mocked. At 9 years old, he already had some of his father's quiet authority. The turn of the century brought changes to Jordan Valley and the surrounding area. The railroad reached nearby towns, making it easier to transport cattle and goods. Automobiles began to appear occasionally on the roads, though most people still relied on horses. The town itself grew, adding new businesses and attracting new families. Through it all, Levi and Beatrice's ranch continued to prosper. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. They had built something lasting, not just a business but a family and a legacy. In 1902, tragedy struck the community when Robert Mackenzie passed away suddenly from a heart ailment. He was 68 years old, and his death hit Levi hard. Robert had been more than a boss or a mentor. He had been like a father to Levi. At the funeral, Levi spoke about how Robert had given him a chance when he was just a young man drifting west, how he had taught him everything he knew about ranching, and how he had treated him like family. Nancy Mackenzie grieved deeply, but bore her loss with the same grace she had shown throughout her life. Her grown children, who had moved away years ago, returned for the funeral and tried to convince her to leave the ranch. But Nancy refused. "This is my home," she said simply. "I will die here, just like Robert did." Levi and Beatrice made sure to visit Nancy often, bringing the children to cheer her up and helping with anything she needed. In a way, they had become the family she needed in her old age, and she became the beloved grandmother their children adored. As their children grew older, Beatrice and Levi faced new challenges. James, at 17, announced he wanted to go to college to study veterinary medicine. It would cost money they did not have readily available, but Levi and Beatrice agreed it was important. "If that is your dream, we will find a way to make it happen," Levi told his son. They made sacrifices, cutting back on expenses and saving every penny they could. In 1904, James left for college in Portland, and the house felt empty without him. But Beatrice and Levi were proud of their son for pursuing his dreams. Lily, at 15, was becoming a skilled rider and had developed a talent for training horses. She worked alongside her father, showing a natural aptitude that made Levi beam with pride. "She has a gift," he told Beatrice. "A real gift. I have never seen anyone communicate with horses the way she does." Samuel, at 13, surprised everyone by showing an interest in carpentry. He spent hours in the workshop Levi had built, creating intricate carvings and learning to build furniture. Rose, at 10, was the scholar of the family, always with her nose in a book, asking questions about everything. In 1905, Margaret Sullivan, who had never missed an opportunity to make Beatrice feel small, was caught embezzling money from the church fund she had managed for years. The scandal rocked Jordan Valley, and Margaret and her husband left town in disgrace. Beatrice felt no satisfaction in Margaret's downfall. If anything, she felt sad that the woman had been so consumed by bitterness and greed. "You ever think about those early days?" Levi asked Beatrice one evening as they sat on their porch, watching the sun set over their land. "When we first met and people were so cruel to you." "Sometimes," Beatrice admitted, But mostly I think about how lucky I was that you saw past all their noise, how you saw me." Levi reached over and took her hand. They had been married for over 20 years now, and his touch still made her heart skip. "I am the lucky one, Beatrice. I have said it before, and I will say it until my dying day. You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen, inside and out. Meeting you changed my life in every way that matters." "We changed each other's lives," Beatrice said softly. "We built this together." They sat in comfortable silence, hands linked, watching the sky turn pink and gold. Behind them, they could hear their children moving about in the house, talking and laughing. It was the sound of a life well lived, a family built on love and respect and unwavering faith in each other. In 1907, James graduated from veterinary school and returned to Jordan Valley to set up his own practice. At 22, he was serious and dedicated, and word quickly spread that young Dr. Yates was skilled and compassionate. Levi and Beatrice helped him get established, and within a year, James was making a good living. That same year, Lily, at 18, fell in love with a young rancher named Daniel Foster who had moved to the area from Nevada. Daniel was kind and hardworking, and most importantly, he treated Lily as an equal partner. He valued her skills with horses and wanted her to be involved in running his ranch. Levi approved of the match, and in the fall of 1907, they were married in a beautiful ceremony on Levi and Beatrice's ranch. Watching her daughter get married, Beatrice thought about her own wedding day all those years ago. She thought about how uncertain she had been then, how she had hardly dared to believe in happiness. Now, watching Lily dance with her new husband, Beatrice felt overwhelming gratitude for the life she had been given. Samuel apprenticed with a master carpenter in town and showed real promise in his chosen field. By the time he was 18, he was taking on his own projects and building a reputation as a skilled craftsman. Rose, at 14, was excelling in school and talking about becoming a teacher. "All our children are finding their paths," Beatrice said to Levi one night. "We did something right." "You did something right," Levi corrected. "You raised them to be confident and kind, to know their own worth and to see the worth in others. That was all you, Beatrice." "It was us," she insisted. "Everything good in this life has been us together." In 1910, Nancy Mackenzie passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 76. She left the Anchor Ranch to Levi in her will, a gesture that stunned him. Her children had their own lives and no interest in the ranch, and Nancy wanted it to go to someone who would love it as she and Robert had. She could not have left it in better hands, Beatrice told Levi as he read the will for the 10th time, still unable to believe it. "She knew you would honor what she and Robert built." Levi hired a manager to run the Anchor Ranch while he continued operating his own spread. The two operations complemented each other well, and the combined enterprise prospered. It was more land and responsibility than Levi had ever imagined having, but he proved equal to the task. The years continued to pass, bringing both joys and sorrows as life always does. Catherine and Thomas both passed away within months of each other in 1912, Catherine at 70 and Thomas at 73. Beatrice grieved for her mother and stepfather, but took comfort in knowing they had lived full lives and had been happy together. In 1913, Samuel married a local girl named Emma, a quiet, sweet woman who loved him deeply. They settled in Jordan Valley, where Samuel opened his own carpentry shop. Rose followed her dream of teaching, taking a position at the town school after graduating from normal school in Portland. And through it all, Levi and Beatrice remained each other's constant. They had weathered droughts and financial hardships, the challenges of raising children and running a ranch, the losses that come with age. But their love had never wavered. If anything, it had deepened, becoming something richer and more complex than those first heady days of romance. On their 30th wedding anniversary in 1913, Levi took Beatrice back to the spot where he had proposed, high in the hills overlooking the valley. They were both older now, Levi at 53 and Beatrice at 51. His hair was more gray than brown, and her face showed the lines of a life fully lived. But when he looked at her, he still saw the woman who had captured his heart 30 years ago. "You ever regret it?" he asked suddenly. "Marrying me? This life was not always easy." Beatrice turned to him in surprise. "Regret? Levi, how could you even ask that? This life with you has been the greatest gift I could have imagined. Yes, it has been hard sometimes, but it has also been beautiful and full and meaningful. I would not change a single moment of it. Even the drought, even the times when money was so tight we barely got by. Even then," she said firmly, "because we faced those challenges together. And do you know what? I would rather face hardship with you than easy comfort with anyone else." Levi pulled her into his arms, holding her close. "I love you, Beatrice. I loved you then, I love you now, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond. And I love you," she whispered against his chest. "My husband, my partner, my heart." They stood there as the sun set, just as they had so many years ago, wrapped in each other's arms and surrounded by the vast beauty of the land they had made their home. In the years that followed, Levi and Beatrice slowed down as age caught up with them. But they never stopped working or dreaming. They hired more help to run the ranches, and they spent more time with their growing family. James married a lovely woman named Sarah, and they gave Levi and Beatrice 3 grandchildren. Lily and Daniel had 4 children. Samuel and Emma had 2. Even Rose, who had sworn she would remain a spinster teacher, surprised everyone by marrying a local businessman at the age of 30, and they had 1 son. The house that had once been filled with the voices of their own children now echoed with the laughter of grandchildren. Levi built a swing under a large tree in the yard, and on Sundays the whole family would gather for dinner. The table was always crowded and loud and chaotic, and Beatrice loved every minute of it. "This is what we built," Levi would say, looking around at their children and grandchildren. "Not just a ranch or a business, but this: family, love, legacy." In 1920, Jordan Valley celebrated its 50th anniversary as an incorporated town, and the community decided to honor some of its longtime residents. Levi and Beatrice were among those recognized for their contributions to the area. At the ceremony, the mayor spoke about how the Yates family had been pillars of the community for nearly 40 years, known for their integrity, hard work, and generosity. As Beatrice stood beside Levi, listening to the mayor's words, she thought about that day so long ago when she had walked down the main street of this town, head held high despite the mockery that followed her. She thought about the young man who had stepped forward to defend her, who had seen her worth when no one else had, and she thought about how that single moment had changed everything. After the ceremony, an old woman approached them. It took Beatrice a moment to recognize Eleanor Pritchard, who had once been a pretty blonde taunting Beatrice about her appearance. Eleanor had not aged well. Life had not been kind to her, and it showed in her lined face and worn clothes. "Mrs. Yates," Eleanor said, her voice uncertain, "I wanted to say something to you. I wanted to apologize for how I treated you all those years ago. I was young and foolish and cruel. Watching you today, seeing what you have built, the family you have raised, the respect you have earned, I realize what a fool I was. You have had a good life, a meaningful life. I wasted mine chasing after shallow things that did not matter. I just wanted you to know that I am sorry." Beatrice looked at the woman who had once made her feel so small. She could have held onto her anger and resentment. She would have been justified in doing so. But what was the point? Carrying that bitterness would only hurt herself. "I accept your apology," Beatrice said gently. "We were both young then. We have both lived and learned. I hope life has brought you some happiness, Eleanor." Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you. You are very gracious." After Eleanor walked away, Levi squeezed Beatrice's hand. "That was kind of you." "Holding on to anger is exhausting," Beatrice said. "And honestly, I feel sorry for her. She wasted so much time on pettiness and judgment. We spent that same time building something beautiful." As they drove home that evening in the automobile that had replaced their old wagon years ago, Beatrice leaned her head on Levi's shoulder and felt completely at peace. She had lived a good life. More than good, actually. She had known real love, had raised children who were making their own marks on the world, had built a home and a family and a legacy that would endure. "What are you thinking about?" Levi asked, glancing over at her. "I am thinking about how that first day we met, when you said I was the most beautiful thing you had ever seen, I did not believe you. I thought you were just being kind. And now I know you meant it. And more than that, I have come to believe it myself. Not because of how I look, but because of who I am. Because of what we built together. Because I learned to see myself through your eyes, and in doing so, I learned to see my own worth." Levi pulled the automobile to the side of the road and turned to face her fully. "Beatrice Yates, you are still the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Even more beautiful now than you were then, because now I know every facet of who you are. I know your strength and your kindness. I know how you love fiercely and completely. I know how you never gave up, even when things were hard. That beauty goes so much deeper than what anyone can see on the surface." She kissed him then, a kiss that held 37 years of love and partnership and devotion. When they pulled apart, both of them had tears in their eyes. "Take me home," she said softly. "To our home, where our life is." They drove the rest of the way in companionable silence, and as they pulled up to the house they had built together all those years ago, they saw lights glowing in the windows. James and his family were staying with them for the weekend, and through the window they could see their grandchildren playing inside. "This is everything I never knew I wanted," Levi said, looking at the scene before them. "This is everything that matters." "Yes," Beatrice agreed. "This is everything." They went inside together, hand in hand, as they had done for nearly 4 decades. And though they did not know it then, they would continue to walk hand in hand for many more years to come. Levi lived to be 91, still sharp-minded and active right up until his final days. Beatrice nursed him when he fell ill in the winter of 1949, and she was holding his hand when he passed peacefully in his sleep. His last words to her were the same words he had spoken so many times over their 67 years of marriage. "You are so beautiful, Beatrice. The most beautiful thing I have ever seen." Beatrice lived for 3 more years after Levi's death, surrounded by her children and grandchildren and even great-grandchildren. She never remarried, saying that she had already had the love of her lifetime and did not need another. When she passed away in her sleep at the age of 90, the entire community mourned. The church was packed for her funeral, with people standing outside because there was not enough room inside. James, her firstborn, now 70 years old, gave the eulogy. He spoke about his mother's kindness and strength, about how she had raised her children to see the good in people and to stand up for what was right. But mostly he talked about the love story between his parents. "My father loved my mother from the first moment he saw her," James said, his voice carrying clearly through the church. "And he never stopped. He taught us what it means to truly love someone, to see beyond the surface to the heart beneath. And my mother taught us what it means to believe in that love, to trust in it even when the world tells you that you are not worthy. Together, they showed us that love is not about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It is about showing up every day, choosing each other every day, building a life together one moment at a time. Levi and Beatrice were buried side by side on a hill overlooking their ranch, the same hill where Levi had proposed so many years ago. Their grandchildren placed flowers on their graves, and their great-grandchildren, who had known them in their final years, spoke softly about the amazing love story of their great-grandparents. The ranch continued on, passed down through generations of Yates children. The original house still stands, lovingly maintained by the family who refuses to let it go. Inside, hanging above the fireplace, is a photograph from Levi and Beatrice's 50th wedding anniversary. In it, they are both smiling, standing close together, Levi's arm around Beatrice's waist. If you look closely at that photograph, you can see everything that mattered about their story. Not just love, but respect. Not just passion, but partnership. Not just romance, but real, enduring devotion. And on the beam over the front door, carved into the wood and still visible today, are the initials LY and BC. Along with the date, they moved into the house. But someone, probably one of their children, carved additional words beneath those initials years later. Words that summed up everything their love story had been about. True love sees true beauty. Those words remain there still, a testament to a love that began with a simple act of kindness on a dusty street in Jordan Valley, Oregon, in the summer of 1882. A love that proved that sometimes the most beautiful things in life are the ones that others fail to see, waiting patiently to be recognized by someone with eyes open enough to look beyond the surface and wise enough to recognize worth when they find it. Levi Yates had been that person for Beatrice Carson, and Beatrice had been his everything in return. Together, they had built a life that mattered, raised children who carried their values forward, and loved each other with a depth and constancy that became legendary in their small corner of the world. Their story reminds us that real beauty is not found in conforming to other people's standards or expectations. It is found in being true to yourself, in finding someone who sees you for who you really are, and in building something lasting together. It reminds us that love is not about perfection, but about acceptance. Not about judgment, but about appreciation. Not about changing someone, but about celebrating them exactly as they are. In a world that so often tells us we are not enough, the love story of Levi and Beatrice Yates stands as a powerful reminder that we are enough, exactly as we are, for the person who truly sees us. And when we find that person, when we find that love, everything else fades away into insignificance. What remains is what matters. Love, family, partnership, a life built together, moment by moment, day by day, year by year. That is the legacy that Levi and Beatrice left behind, not just a successful ranch or a large family, though they had both, but rather a living example of what love can be when it is built on a foundation of mutual respect, genuine admiration, and unwavering commitment. Their descendants carry that legacy forward still, passing down the story of how a cowboy saw beauty where others saw only flaws, and how that single moment of recognition changed two lives forever. And if you ever find yourself in Jordan Valley, Oregon, you can still visit that hillside where Levi proposed to Beatrice all those years ago. You can still see the ranch they built together, still standing strong more than a century later. And if you are very quiet and pay close attention, you might almost hear the echo of a young man's voice carrying across the years, speaking words that changed everything. "You are the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." Those words were true then. They remained true through 67 years of marriage. And they echo still, a reminder that real beauty, real love, real worth cannot be diminished by the judgments of small-minded people. It can only be recognized, celebrated, and cherished by those wise enough to see it. That is the story of Beatrice and Levi. That is the power of love that sees beyond the surface. That is the legacy they left behind. And that, ultimately, is what makes their story worth telling, worth remembering, and worth holding up as an example of what love can and should be. The end of their earthly story was really just the beginning of their lasting impact, rippling forward through generations, teaching their children and their children's children that the most important thing in life is not what others think of you, but what you think of yourself and who you choose to share your life with. And if you are lucky enough to find someone who sees you, truly sees you, the way Levi saw Beatrice on that dusty street so long ago, then you hold onto that love with everything you have, because that is the most precious thing in the world.